Hello. Today in this video we are going to talk about word stress in simple words. But before we start talking about it, I would like to share with you a phrase that in a way it's related to this topic. And it says here, it reads, we can perceive sound because we can hear silence. And this is true. We perceive contrasts all the time between silence and sound, between important syllables and not so important ones. So, this is all about. But first, let's start defining what a stressed syllable is. Every word that we say has a prominent syllable. Sometimes it is the only syllable of the word. But when we have more than one syllable, there's always one which is or stands out from the rest. So we can define this prominence from two perspectives. Articulatory perspective, how we produce the stressed syllable, and the auditory perspective, how we perceive a stressed syllable. We are going to analyze this according to these characteristics that you can see here: pitch, loudness, length, and quality. Let's start with pitch. Here we have a soprano and a tenor. So we are going to see this represents more or less what pitch is. Articulatory, we can say that every syllable contains a vowel or a diphthong and or a consonant. So this syllable is produced with vibration of the vocal cords. Now the tensa, they are, if we stretch them, the more we stretch them, the faster they vibrate, producing a higher note or sound. So here we have some examples. B, I'm stretching the vocal cords, producing a higher note. Afterwards, afterwards. Here I am relaxing the vocal cords, yes, so I shorten them and I produce a graver sound. Oil, oil, outlet. So here I am like playing with my vocal cords, stretching them and relaxing them. From the auditory point of view, we can say that is that property of a sound that makes us, when we hear them, place them on a scale from high or low, a high note or a low one. And here we have the same examples. Yes, we can perceive B as a higher note than afterwards, a lower, yes, or graver note. So remember, the tenser, the stretch they are, the higher the note is. Now, the second characteristic is loudness. And here you have a picture representing that. From the articulatory point of view, we can say that a loud syllable needs a greater muscular energy to be produced, and of course, breath force, much breath force. And here we have the examples: infer, tail, banana. So when I am producing this loud syllables, I said, for example, I repeat, infer. In order to produce that sound, I need the second syllable to be produced with more or with greater muscular energy. Auditory, auditorily, I would say, it's a property that allowed us to, when we hear this syllable, we place it on a scale from loud or strong to soft, weak. Yes, so we can perceive it. Infer, we perceive it as louder, the second syllable, with respect to the first one. Now, This characteristic that I also have to share here, which is length, yes, it's when we are producing a syllable, length, we produce it a little longer, a bit longer, yes, than a syllable that is not prominent. So when I say infer, the second syllable is produced a bit longer and it's also perceived a little longer. Not so much, but enough for the brain to get it. Okay. So remember that length, as it says here, it's a syllable that is produced or perceived a little longer than the others in the same word. Now, when we get into quality, we can define from the articulatory point of view on how we give shape, yes, to the resonators or the cavities that enhance the sound. We shape them and we produce different kinds of sounds according to these movements. So we can modify, amplify, or suppress the vibration by the different movements we produce with the mouth. So, for example, here we have the word hat, hat. I am opening the mouth and stretching a little the lips. So I say hat. Now, if I say hut, hut, lips are neutral. Practically, I do not make any movement with them. Hut. So the tongue is in mid position. So the sound we perceive is totally different from the previous one. Hat, hat, in which I stretch a little the lips and open the mouth. So those movements that we made with the resonators modified, producing different quality sounds. And of course, auditorily is that feature that allows us to perceive, yes, different quality sounds. So here we have the examples. Pen, pan, full, useful. So we perceive different, as you see, little, cottage. We perceive different quality sounds because of the different movements I produced. Now, the scale of prominence, according to quality, to this shape we give to the resonators in order to produce this sound, has a kind of rank. So first we have the vowels, and within them, first the long ones and the open ones are the ones that are going to produce more prominent syllables. Then the semivowels, ya and wa. Then we have nasals and laterals, like for example here, little, right? Fricatives, uh, for example, if I am saying soon, right? And plosives, like here, cottage. So that is the rank of quality, yes, syllables that are perceived as prominent when compared to others, not sharing these characteristics. Now, when we are writing, especially in phonetics, or when we are looking up the pronunciation of words in the dictionary, we have to pay attention to the notation, to the way in which prominent syllables are, um, are written. How can we identify them in written work? So, first of all, we need to understand that there are two groups of syllables, the stress, accented ones, and the unstressed or unaccented ones. When we have a word, the most prominent syllable of that word is going to carry what we call a primary stress, which is a kind of hyphen, as you can see in the slide here, which is placed before and above the syllable that is prominent. For example, Surprising, surprising. There you have that the notation indicates that pri is the syllable that is more prominent. Now, sometimes it happens that we have, especially in words of three or more syllables, we have more than one prominent stress. We have the most prominent one, which is marked as primary stress, as I have said, and then we have another stress, which is also important, and that is called secondary stress. And it is marked with a hyphen that goes below and before the syllable that carries the second important stress in that word. Here we have an example. Unsurprising. Unsurprising. Yes. Rise. So let's sum up. We can say that stress is a degree or the degree of emphasis given to a sound in a syllable in speech, of course, that makes it prominent. It is also called lexical stress or word stress. Now, English, which is different from other languages, has a variable or flexible stress. Now, what does this mean? Well, that the stress pattern that we use for different words help us distinguish meanings of words than otherwise would be or would appear to be the same. So stress help us realize which is the grammatical category of the word, if you want. For example, if I say an object and to object, in which case I am indicating a different grammatical category. Now, when we talk about word stress, we can classify it into three categories. Simple words, which are words that contain two or more syllables, and they carry, of course, primary stress because it has one prominent syllable. Then we have complex words, which are words plus affixation. Affixation is a particle, a syllable that we can add to that original word, and therefore we change the grammatical category of this word. Now we can add a syllable before the original word, which is a prefix, or we can add it afterwards, which is a suffix. But we will talk about that in some other video. In this case, we are going to have, as I have mentioned before, a primary and a secondary stress. And then we have compound words. Compound words are two words that have different meaning, yes, and when they are together, they form a third new meaning, right? In this case, we can have a primary and a secondary stress respectively. But again, it's like a new word, and then we will talk about that in another video. Let's go to simple words, which is what we have to discuss today. The first thing we have to realize is that when we are talking about number of syllables in a word, we are talking about the syllables that we perceive when we listen to the word, not the amount of syllables that are written in a word. So careful with this. It's just the number of syllables that we perceive when we listen, okay? Now, there are kind of a guide that you can follow in order to know when or where, better said, to stress these syllables, these words. So, for example, we are going to stress the first syllable of most two-syllable nouns, and here we have the examples, climate, knowledge, most two-syllable adjectives, flippant, spacious, most two-syllable adverbs, maybe, never. Now, we are going to stress the last syllable of most two-syllable verbs. For example, here, require, decide, or most two-syllable prepositions, behind, across. Here it says very clearly, most, not all, because there are exceptions. So careful with this. There are exceptions to this. Now, when we are talking about the structure of the syllable, because we say, well, we stress the first syllable, the last syllable, we can talk about a heavy or a light syllable. A heavy syllable contains a long vowel or a diphthong. That's why we make it prominent. Except the diphthong O, because it starts with a central vowel, yes, which is schwa. And it's, of course, a weak vowel. We never, ever stress a syllable containing schwa. This is very important for you to remember. Or, as it says here, ends in more than one consonant. So we can say that if we have a syllable containing a long vowel or a diphthong, we are going to consider it heavy or strong. Otherwise, it's going to be weak or light. And we always stress, as I said before, a heavy or strong syllable. So here we have, in the case of nouns, more examples. Person, table, schedule. Adjectives: faster, quiet, stronger. Adverbs: always, louder, slightly. So you see, louder, always. We perceive that difference, yes, between a prominent and a non-prominent or heavy and light syllables. In the case of verbs, suspend, infer, deny, and prepositions: about, between, along. So remember, always stress on a strong syllable. Now there are words, and as I have referred to them before, when it says that it helps us identify the meaning of a word that otherwise it would be ambiguous. So there are, here we have a group of words that have the same spelling, but because of the stress pattern that we change, we convey a different meaning. They are called heteronyms. And if they function as nouns, or they may function as adjectives as well, are stressed on the first syllable. We keep on this rule of the first syllable for these grammatical categories. So we have import, project, rebel, export. And then we have verbs, same words but stressed on the second syllable. Import, project, rebel, export. So careful with these words. We have to be sure of the kind of grammatical category we are using, so we stress them in the correct syllable. And of course, to end up this presentation, some important advice, which is the following. This is a guide to be orientated in the pronunciation of words. But as I have said, there are many exceptions. So, as it says here, before any presentation, teaching class, consult with the dictionary, those words, check with the dictionary, these words that you are unsure of, okay? Well, that's all for this video. I hope to see you soon in some other video. Thank you. Bye-bye.